Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunati Ravanachari Yamunati Ravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunati Ramanachari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Asatar Sadashri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Jagaho Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shai Mukunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Mathura Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Gangamai Jamuna Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Gaur Premanande All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvisesa Sundavadi Paskatyade Satarane. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Padijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Vanchakalpatubhyascha Kripasindhavyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnava. Okay, I was told it was verses 19 to 21. And we have 17 up. I mean, I could talk on 17 and 18, but I've prepared something on 19 through 21. Yeah, okay. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So it's May 24th, 2025, Bhaktivedanta Manor in London. We're reading from Sri Caitanya-Caritāmṛta, Madhya-lilā, Chapter 14, Performance of the Vrindavan Pastimes, text 19 through 21. Tahe Mahaprabhu Tanre Aishvara Dekaila Karhare na kahibe e niseda karila. Please chant. Na kahibe niseda karila. Tabe Mahaprabhu Tanre Aishwarya Dekaila. Karhihana kahibe e niseda karila. Tabe Mahaprabhu Tanre Aishwarya Dekaila. Karhihana kahibe e niseda karila. Ladies? Tabe Mahaprabhu Tanre Aishwarya Dekaila. Karhihana kahibe e niseda karila. Tabe Mahaprabhu Tanre Aishwarya Dekaila. Karehana kahibe e niseda karila. Tabe. At that time, Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Tanre, to the king. She should try to go cool. Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Gauranitai. Aishvarya, divine power, Dekaila, showed. Kariha na kaibe, do not speak to anyone. This, Niseda Karila, forbade. At that time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu displayed some of his divine opulences to the king, and he forbade him to disclose this to anyone. Whenever I read these things, I always wonder, how did we find out about it? Somebody must have talked about it to somebody. Text 20, Raja Hena Jnana Kabu Na Kaila Prakasha, Antare Sakala Janena Bahire Udasha. Although within his heart, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knew everything that was happening, externally, he did not disclose it, nor did he disclose that he knew he was talking with King Prataparudra, who was there basically in a semi-disguise. Text 21, Prataparudera Bhagya Dehi Bhakta Gane, Rajare Prasame Sabe Anandita Mane. Translation, seeing the Lord's special mercy upon King Prataparudra, the devotees praised the king's fortune, and their minds became open and blissful. Srila Prabhupada's purport. This is a characteristic of a Vaishnava. He is never envious if one receives the mercy and strength of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. A pure Vaishnava is very happy to see a person elevated in devotional service. Unfortunately, there are many so-called Vaishnavas who become envious to see someone actually recognized by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It is a fact that no one can preach Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message without receiving the special mercy of the Lord. This is known to every Vaishnava, yet there are some envious people who cannot tolerate the expansion of this Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. They find fault with the pure devotee preacher and do not praise him for the excellent service he renders in fulfilling Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. Prabhupada would sometimes go to meetings of the sometimes devotees in ISKCON say the Gaudiya Mat, but since the disappearance of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, there have been many Gaudiya Mats. There's no longer a Gaudiya Mat. And sometimes Prabhupada would go to meetings of various Gaudiya Mats, and they would have like a brochure advertising their different accomplishments. Just like we do that, right? We'll have a brochure. But they wouldn't mention him. They'd mentioned all these different, and they wouldn't mention him. They wouldn't mention what he was doing. And he's like, I'm also doing this for Guru Maharaj. Why are we not promoting these activities that we're all, So this was his. We should not be like that. Yeah? We should not be like that. At that time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu displayed some of his divine opulences to the king, and he forbade him to disclose this to anyone. Although within his heart, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knew everything that was happening externally, he did not disclose it. Nor did he disclose that he knew he was talking with King Prataparudra. Seeing the Lord's special mercy upon King Prataparudra, the devotees praised the king's fortune, and their minds became open and blissful. I hope you excuse me, I have a broken hand and I'm not quite so. Dexterous is the right word, as I usually am. All right. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says there's only 2 rules in the spiritual world. Have love and don't envy. That's it. There's no other rules. There's not a long list. There's not like lots of GBC resolutions. I mean, Prabhupada said we'd have another ISKCON in the spiritual world. You don't need GBC resolutions. You don't need CPO resolutions. You don't need UK laws. 2 things. Have love, don't envy. Prabhupada would sometimes say the only difference between material consciousness and spiritual consciousness is in material consciousness, we're happy at others' unhappiness, and we're unhappy at others' happiness. He said we might not like to admit that. Frankly, we may not even admit it to ourselves, but that's often the situation. We're a spiritual consciousness, we're happy at others' happiness, and we're unhappy at others' unhappiness. Mm-hmm. And in Adi-lila 1442 purport, Prabhupada's talking about how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a child would steal. And Prabhupada writes, the difference between the spiritual and material worlds is that stealing in the spiritual world is done in friendship and love, whereas fighting and stealing within this material world are executed on the basis of enmity and envy. Therefore, we should understand that in the spiritual world, all these activities exist, but there is no inebriety, whereas in the material world, all activities are full of miserable conditions. However, if we get free of envy, even though geographically we're here, and we're still going to get old and injured and sick and die, and there's still going to be too much rain or not enough rain and that kind of thing, we will not experience that we're living in the material world. Prabhupada says if we see things properly, there'll be no material world. There's one lecture where he says that 3 times. He said there'll be no material world, there'll be no material world, there'll be no material world. If we change our consciousness. Mm-hmm. So we're going to look at what is envy, what is love, and how do we get from envy to love. Does that sound okay? Yes? All right. So what is envy? Mm-hmm.
It's indirect appreciation.
Indirect appreciation. Well, it's pretty indirect. But it's pretty indirect. It's the perversion of appreciation. Envy means that I don't want you to have anything as good or better than what I have. That's basically. You can have a nice car as long as my car is nicer. You can have a happy marriage as long as my marriage is happier. You can have a smart kid as long as my kid is smarter. And as here we're seeing with King Prataparudra, you can be Krishna conscious as long as I'm more Krishna conscious. And especially if you've been around less time than I have, you definitely can't be more Krishna conscious. Forget it. Now that we want to stay on the top. We want to be the supreme. We don't mind being generous and giving, and as long as I'm better in some way. Yeah? And if I see that you're better, then I want to take stuff away from you until you're a little less than me. So Prabhupada describes in Bhagavatam 4:19 purport, he says, in the material world, everyone who comes to enjoy himself or lord it over material nature is envious of others. Oops. Everyone. We're trying to lord it over. What does that mean? Just like Hiranyakashipu said, I don't want any rivals. Prabhupada also says here, he said, since no one in this material world can tolerate another's advancement, everyone in this material world is called Matsara, or envious. If someone's greater than us, we try to take them down. Just read any news source any day, and you'll see that it's full of criticism of people who are rich, powerful, famous, accomplished, right? And people love to do that. They love to criticize anybody who's in a higher position. So we have some examples in the Bhagavatam of this kind of envy, even among persons who shouldn't be envious. Can you think of some examples? Well, Hiranyakashipu, we expect him to be envious. That's expected. Daksha, yeah, we don't expect Daksha to be envious. He's the direct child of Lord Brahma. He's one of the Prajapatis, very exalted. And he was envious of Lord Shiva, his own son-in-law. What was he envious of exactly? That Lord Shiva was what? More renounced, more Krishna conscious than he was, frankly, on a higher platform of devotion. And he was very offended that Lord Shiva didn't externally show him respect. And the whole thing really got out of control, didn't it? I mean, it really escalated. Daksha became so offended because he was so envious. And the whole yajna was ruined with cursing and counter-cursing. And then later there was just this, the sati immolates herself. And again, another yajna is ruined. I mean, it was a major problem. And of course, for Daksha himself, this was also a major problem. He ended up literally losing his head. And having to walk around looking like a goat. That's pretty intense, right? I mean, everybody would know. You wouldn't be able to hide how envious you were if you were walking around with a goat's head. And he apologizes to Lord Shiva, but his mentality doesn't change. How do we know his mentality doesn't change? He didn't actually change his envious mentality. How do we know that? What happens to Daksha? He takes another birth, yeah? Instead of being a direct son of Lord Brahma, born without a mother, he actually has to enter into Marisha's womb, and he's the son of the Prachetas, who are all pure devotees. They're kshatriyas, but they're all pure devotees. And then what does he do in that birth? Who's he envious of? Narada Muni. What is he envious of with Narada Muni? His freedom. Narada Muni's freedom, his renunciation. Again, his spiritual advancement. He was envious of his spiritual advancement. And he offends Narada, and then we don't hear about him anymore. We don't hear about Daksha anymore. He's gone. Right? Such an exalted person. We wouldn't expect this kind of behavior from the son of Lord Brahma, from the son of the Prachetas. Okay, what else in the Bhagavatam? Huh? Indra. Well, Indra, we have a whole bunch of them. Well, let's go with Indra. So we have, of course, Govardhan-lila. How ridiculous. You're the king of heaven, of the whole universe, and there's just some little village that's not worshiping you. Like, what does it matter? Like, there's so many devotees here in this temple room. If one of you doesn't like me, I mean, like, so what? One village doesn't like you. And what is he envious of? Yeah?
Because Giriraj got the respect which he was supposed to.
Yes, Giriraj got the respect, and little Krishna also got the respect. He couldn't tolerate that. Why is this child? So we particularly become angry again when someone who's apparently junior to us we just can't tolerate that at all. Somebody who's socially junior to us in some way. They haven't been around as long. Why did he get the promotion? He's only been here for 2 years. I've been here for 3. So he just couldn't tolerate this little child was being respected more than he was, and that they were worshiping a mountain instead of him. That worship is for me. It's not supposed to go to anyone else. Indra and Prithu is a strong example. And we're going to look at that again later. Where, Indra sees Prithu Maharaj, who's a Shaktivesh avatar, doing, what was Prithu Maharaj doing? How many? 100. He never did get to 100, But he was working his way up to 100. And as soon as he got to 99, so what's Indra envious of? Fame. What else? Piety. Yeah, you do all these yagyas, you're going to have all this piety. And then, well, maybe he'll become Indra. I won't have my position anymore. Maybe he'll be as good as I am. And so he ends up, again, causing all this trouble, like Daksha's envy causes all this trouble. So Indra ends up creating all these false religions in an attempt to steal the horse. He causes havoc in society. And some other examples of envy. Mantra. That also had devastating consequences for a lot of people. Mantra is so envious that her queen's co-wife's son was going to be the king, although everybody knew that was going to happen from the beginning. But when it actually came down there, what was she envious of? If the queen you're serving is that her son becomes the king, then she's going to become the most important queen mother, and then you, as her servant, are going to become the most important servant. So we have this kind of envy also. It's like a group thing. My group is better than your group. Someone was just telling me a story that a devotee heard that some other group was chanting Hare Krishna and said, well, they won't get any benefit. Reminded me of the story that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati tells about envy. Where, you go to your friend and say, hey, you remember our friend in school, Mr. So-and-so? Well, he's a high court judge. Him? He was such a goof-off in school. I don't believe he could be a high court. No, really, I saw him sitting on the bench. Well, they must not be paying him. So somehow my group is better. My country is better. Sorry to inform you guys, but the UK really had a problem with this over the centuries. They say the most celebrated, you know what the most celebrated holiday in the whole world is? Do you know? Independence from the UK. Every 6 days, some country celebrates that they finally got rid of all you guys. But what was sorry about that. What was the British mentality? We're better than everyone. We're going to take over everything. We're going to run it better. And we're envious of their wealth. We're going to take their wealth from them. The whole European colonization was based on this. You had some good competition from the Spaniards, don't worry. They were even more envious. And they'd go to countries and, they'd take all the wealth and kill all the people. In the name of Jesus also they did that. They were really good at that. We're killing you for Jesus, and we're taking your gold for Jesus. We want to be the best country. And there's wars going on in the world like that. We want what you have on your land. Oh, you have more grains on your land than we have in our land. We're going to kill your people and take it. Correct? Killing people. Bombing cities. Killing, maiming children over this envy. And it comes down even, football teams, cricket teams. My team is better than yours. And people can get very worked up about this. Yes? Okay, you ready for this one? I don't know if I should say this. I don't know if I'll be invited back. My religion's better than your religion. My dear friends, everybody else doesn't have to be going to hell for us to want to be a member of the Hare Krishna movement, okay? That's envy. Of course, we all feel that being a Gaudiya Vaishnava in ISKCON under the shelter of Srila Prabhupada is the best place to be. That's why we're here. If we didn't think it was the best place to be, that would be rather cognitive dissonance. Yes? But one of the reasons that I took shelter of Srila Prabhupada is that he had a non-sectarian approach. Prabhupada was not envious. The first time I got initiated in the mail in 73. The first time I actually met Prabhupada face-to-face was in 74 when he came for the first Chicago Rath Yatra. And I was there with my husband. I was expecting our first child, and my father was also there. And my father said, is it all right if I come to the temple even though I'm not a devotee of Krishna? Kind of like, there's temples in India where if you're not a Hindu, you can't go in. So he was thinking like that. Although my father did become a devotee of Krishna, but that's another story. But so he said, is that okay? He said, I have my own religion. And Prabhupada was sitting like this, he had his dhoti up around his knee, and he was sitting like this. He says, yes. He said, there can be many religions. He said, just like we're in Chicago, and so many planes are coming to Chicago. He said, but they have to know they're going to Chicago. Otherwise, there's no meaning of many planes. He said, so if you're trying to know God and love him, then that is religion. And something I've meditated on for years. In so many religions, they're not trying to know and love God. That's something else. It's not that every plane in the sky is going to Chicago. Some are going to Tokyo, so many things. But there are many airlines that fly to Chicago. Yes? So we don't have to feel good about ourselves by criticizing others. Such a radical idea. I don't have to feel good about my choices, my life, my group, myself, by trying to take away from others what I have. They can have it too. Other people in other religions can attain love of God. What a novel idea. Other countries can have also good political systems that we can admire. We don't have to destroy them. Other countries can have natural resources. We don't have to take it away from them. We don't have to criticize or take away something from someone else out of envy. Some more examples in the Shastra of envy. Ramachandra Puri. Wow, what was he envious of? What was he envious of? Mahaprabhu's what? Renunciation. He was envious of his renunciation. He was also definitely envious of his prestige. Yes, he felt Mahaprabhu had prestige, and he felt he didn't earn it because there were ants in his room. You don't deserve for anyone to respect you because there's ants in your room. Durvasa Muni. And can you imagine wanting to kill someone because they drank a little water? What was he envious of? He was more Krishna, he was more devoted. Although he was a householder and a kshatriya, he was a king. Durvasa was a renunciate, but yet Ambarish was more elevated spiritually. And again, this is the extreme envy when you think a junior surpasses you. You know, that really just like, I was trying to kill him. Now, it may surprise you that the Bhagavatam says Parikshit was envious. This is 1:18:29. I didn't write down the Sanskrit, but it's Matsara, envy. O Brahmanas, thus the king, due to the circumstances of extreme hunger and thirst, unprecedentedly directed his anger and envy towards a Brahmin sage. And Prabhupada talks about that in the purport. He said, for a king like Maharaj Parikshit to become angry and envious, especially towards a sage and a Brahmana, was undoubtedly unprecedented. The king knew well that Brahmanas, sages, children, women, and old men, that's a long list. Brahmanas, sages, children, women, old men, are always beyond the jurisdiction of punishment. Similarly, the king, even though he commits a great mistake, is never to be considered a wrongdoer. But in this case, Maharaj Parikshit became angry and envious toward the sage due to his thirst and hunger by the will of the Lord. We should not claim that our envy is by the will of the Lord, please. Well, I'm envious of you because the Lord wants me to be. No. What was he envious of? Think about this very carefully. What was he envious of? Maharaj Parikshit was feeling what? He was distressed from his body. He was feeling hungry and thirsty, right? So we all know that when we're hungry and thirsty, we're not as tolerant. Am I correct? Yes? If you're hungry, thirsty, tired, sick, or if there's been some kind of mental anxiety or distress, your tolerance level is decreased. You know, the way I think of it, it's like we have a limit of tolerance. I think of it like a cup. And if I'm already tolerating being hungry or thirsty or tired or sick or somebody's mad at me, it's like I've already like come to almost the limit of what I can hold in my cup of tolerance. And so if something else happens, like, it's just this mess. And I always tell people who deal with children, if a child's uncharacteristically ill-behaved, first, are they tired? Are they hungry? Are they sick? Did their parents have a fight this morning? What else is going on? Was Shamaka Rishi affected by his bodily situation? Was Shamaka Rishi, who was in Samadhi, was he affected by his bodily situation? No. You know, even materially, we have like shadows of Samadhi. A person can get, the psychologists call it a state of flow. You can get so absorbed in something that you forget about your body. Has this happened to you? Yes? You're so absorbed in what you're doing. I've seen teenagers do this with video games. Like you've been playing, we had a family visit us and their 15-year-old woke up and got on the computer. And like 2 hours later, I said, did you even like use the bathroom or bathe or anything? He's like, what? So it's possible to become so absorbed, even materially, that you practically forget about your body, right? Have you forgotten to eat because you were absorbed in something? That's happened to me. First time I read the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, when I was in university, I forgot to go to lunch. I just forgot. You know, it got to be like I was reading, and like, oh my God, I missed the meal. Yeah? So imagine spiritual samadhi, it starts before you can go into samadhi, you have to have pratyahara, where you withdraw your senses. You lose your sensory awareness of your environment. So here Maharaj Parikshit was very aware of his body. His body was screaming at him, feed me! Give me something to drink right now, hurry up, hurry up. And so he was very aware of that, and it was just putting him in distress, and he comes in this sage, is not aware of anything. He's completely in trance, he's not aware of anything. So this is detachment and spiritual advancement. I'm sorry, but it just has to be said. We should look for this, my dear friends. Because Prabhupada said, everyone in the material world is matsara or envious. Are we in the material world? We're probably envious. Probably. At least I am. Maybe none of you are. But, probably. Statistically speaking, it's likely. So it's likely that a lot of our interactions with other living entities is contaminated by this envy. Is that at least logically reasonable? I'm sure it applies to everybody but me, but One nice thing about giving a group class is you can say very heavy things because everybody can figure you're talking about other people. If you're talking one-on-one, you have to be a little bit more careful. So I'm not looking at any of you. None of you here, but somebody out there. But it might be a good idea to think like that. We have such a tendency to find fault with others, to say that others can't, we see some little fault. Oh, just see, they have a little fault. There's ants. They can't really be advanced. They drank some water. They can't really be advanced. They didn't hear me. They didn't give me a glass of water. They can't actually be civilized. Something in some way that we feel that we can put others down. All right, where do we want to go? Let's look at the goal that we want to go to, and then we're going to look at how we're going to get there. So now that you're all suitably depressed, so I always like to do depressing things in the beginning. Yeah, I don't like to end on a depressing note. I like to always end on a high note. So where are we going? We want to go to the spiritual world. We want to go to Vaikuntha, and we want to be feeling that we're in Vaikuntha here. Remember I was saying, Prabhupada said if we're in the proper consciousness, there's no material world? So what's it like in Vaikuntha? So here we can turn to 3rd Canto, chapter 15, where there's a description of the kingdom of God. I was looking for one purport that I didn't have the time to find, where Prabhupada talks about that in Vaikuntha, everybody is appreciating everyone else's service. But I did find two of my favorite verses which exemplify this in terms of looking at specific residents of the spiritual world. So this is 3:15, 18, and 19. 18 is, when the bees hum in a high pitch, singing the glories of the Lord, there is a temporary lull in the noise of the pigeon, the cuckoo, the crane, the chakravaka, the swan, the parrot, the partridge, and the peacock. Such transcendental birds stop their own singing simply to hear the glories of the Lord. Now let's think about that for a minute. Do we generally think of the sound that bees make as particularly pleasant compared to the sound that birds make? No. Therapy. Okay, there's bee noise therapy. I have that kind of app on my phone. I actually, no, I know. I used it the other day when I wanted to take a little nap in the middle of the day and people were making noise in the ashram. And where else did I use that? Oh, when I was at the Bhakti Center in New York, which is almost equivalent to trying to sleep in Soho Street Temple. Very, very similar, yeah. I remember years ago I was trying to sleep in Soho in the summer at night, and you had a choice. You could close the window and suffocate, or you could open the window and not sleep. I don't think I had a mobile phone then, and I don't think I had it. But now I have a noise app, and I can choose white noise. I think there's green noise, pink noise, brown noise, and I can combine waterfalls and ocean waves. I can customize my own little sounds there. Yes, but these are not the kind of sounds. These are the kind of sounds that you use to just block out other noise so you can sleep. But they're not the kind of sounds you're going to go to a concert to hear. Let's go to a bee humming concert, It's like, I don't think so. But you might want to go listen to the birds. In fact, the Bhagavatam in the 2nd canto, it says that the birds are indicative of Krishna's what? Anybody read my book, Krishna Meditations? The birds are indicative of Krishna's what? Artistry. So in the way they fly, in their colors, in the way they walk, even penguins are kind of, right? And in their songs. We like listening to bird songs. You might want to go in the woods to hear a symphony of bird songs. And there are many people who devote their big hobby, identifying birds by their songs and listening to bird songs. But the birds in the spiritual world, when they hear the bees, they appreciate it. They stop singing, oh, let's appreciate the bees. There's no envy. They're not thinking, we're the birds. We're those bees. Bzz, bzz, bzz. We sing so much better than you. Bzz, bzz. Who are you? That's not their mood. Their mood is, oh, the bees are coming. The bees are chanting. Shh, let's listen to the bees. There's no envy. There's just appreciation. In the next verse, although flowering plants like the Mandara, Kunda, Kurabaka, Utpala, Champaka, Arna, Punaga, Nagakeshara, Bakula, Lily, and Parijata are full of transcendental fragrance, they are still conscious of the austerities performed by Tulasi, for Tulasi is given special preference by the Lord, who garlands himself with Tulasi leaves. So here we have something similar. Of course, we know that Tulsi has a very special fragrance which can bring an impersonalist to personalism and is an udipana, or a stimulant for those in Shantaras. So Tulsi does have this amazing divine fragrance. But externally, if you're going to compare a Champaka flower and a Parijata flower to a Tulsi flower, you're going to think these are much more fragrant flowers, yes? And more beautiful as well. All the different colors and the shapes and the form. I mean, Tulsi has these little tiny white or purple flowers. I mean, they're very, 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 very tiny. Prabhupada writes in the purport, the most important thing about the spiritual world is that there is no envy among the devotees there. This is true even among the flowers, who are all conscious of the greatness of Tulasi. In the Vaikuntha world entered by the four Kumaras, even the birds and flowers are conscious of service to the Lord. So the flowers aren't, I am pretty. Look at all my colors. Look at all my shapes, all my forms. This fragrance I have is Parijata, is so amazing that Indra fought a battle for the shadow of me in the heavenly planets. Who is this Tulsi? Just green. Not so much noticeable fragrance. No, that's not their mood. Their mood is, oh, the Lord loves Tulsi so much. How much does the Lord love Tulsi? She never leaves him. You know, he always has Tulsi on him. Always. He's never apart from Tulsi. Like the Srivatsa of Lakshmi Devi and the leaves of Tulsi are always garlanding the Lord. When the Lord appeared, when, you know, all the cowherd boys and the calves that Brahma apparently stole, right? And Krishna manifested another set, and those set all turned into Vishnu forms. Every Vishnu form, Prabhupada said, was covered head to toe with Tulsi. And so I asked Hari Parshad about this, and I'm saying, he's like you just cover with like they're just stuck all over. What is this? And he said, no, it means like garlands. So he had like, you know, a Tulsi armlet and Tulsi bracelets and Tulsi necklaces and Tulsi belts and Tulsi anklets. Sometimes we have so many manjaris, yeah, that we can cover. You've seen like that? You have the deities covered in Tulsi. And the flowers are just appreciative. Here's a plant that it doesn't appear to be as beautiful or fragrant as we are. But actually, her beauty and fragrance surpasses ours because the Lord is so pleased with her. The Lord doesn't always wear a Parijata. We don't read that the Lord always has a Parijata garland or always has a Champaka garland. But he always has Tulsi. And they're not envious. They're not thinking, that's not fair. So this is where we want to go. Krishnadas Kaviraj describes the attitude of the gopis that pleases Krishna very much. That the gopis are thinking, let Krishna enjoy with that other gopi. They're pushing the other gopis forward. Srimati Radharani, it says she enjoys 10 million times more when Krishna's enjoying with another gopi. That would never happen in this world. You know, if some guy has a wife and a mistress, the wife's not going to say, I'm so much happier when you're enjoying with your mistress, unless she doesn't like the guy, you know, that's something else. Like, go to your mistress, get out of my hair. We're not talking about that. I was reading about this mobster, this criminal, that he had a wife, and he always had so many other girls, so many other women. She knew, and she just figured that's what you have to tolerate when you marry a mobster, you know. But then he went into the witness protection program. You know what that is? Where you agree to testify against somebody, like he agreed to work for the government and testify against the other mob bosses. So the government protected him because the other mob bosses would want to kill him, so they changed his name, changed his, you know, identification numbers and things, so they relocated him and his wife. So guess what? Now he had a new name and a new identity. So he not only got a mistress, but he married her under the new name and new identity. So he was now maintaining two households without them knowing about each other. And it was very interesting because the wife, who had tolerated all of these mistresses up until then, when she found out he had another wife, she tried to kill her. And I thought about it, like, why? You already tolerated that your husband had so many women. But before that, she could say, because they were interviewing her, but I'm the wife. They're just the mistresses. I'm superior. I have something more. But now somebody had as much as she had, and she's like, I'm not going to tolerate that. So the gopis are not like that. They're exactly the opposite. They're like, oh, if that gopi can make Krishna happier, then Krishna should go to her. And I'm happier when I see Krishna enjoying with that gopi. They're thinking of what will make Krishna happy. If Krishna will be happier with somebody else, then I'll do everything for that person. I'm not interested in my own position, my own prestige. All right. Now, let's imagine for a minute that we were there. Because we actually are there. You know, we are a soul. Many years ago, oh my God, this must be like 48, 49 years ago. So we were in the Boston temple. So our oldest son, who's now 50, he'll be 51 this year. So he was very small. And the way the temple is in Boston, have any of you been to the Boston temple? Anybody been to the Boston temple? So anything you say in any part of that temple can be heard in any other part of the temple. Unless you really just like whisper. You have to just like talk like this. So there was a floor for the ladies' ashram, but also a lot of us married ladies lived there, and the husbands could visit their wives there. They had to like ring a bell and announce themselves. So my husband was visiting, and he was watching our son, and I had to do something. And somehow he let him play with a glass jar. And our son cut his hand, and he must have really cut into a big blood vessel because there was like blood everywhere. It wasn't a serious cut, but it looked serious. So I came back, and I freaked out. Like, what have you done? So I'm screaming at my husband, which could be heard throughout. Every single devotee in the whole temple could hear that I was screaming at him. So the temple president calls me to his room, to his office, you know, and he's like, you shouldn't talk to your husband like that. And the temple president looks at me and he said, but you should be humble. And I said, but I'm not humble. And he said, yes, you are. He said, you're a soul. He said, as a soul, you're completely humble. He said, your arrogance is a pretense. And it was one of those paradigm shifts for me. It changed the whole rest of my practice of Krishna consciousness. We are actually already non-envious. We already have the mentality of the flowers and the birds and the gopis and the cow. We already have that mentality. It's actually who we are. This envy is an artificial imposition. It's because of the modes of material nature. We don't have to exactly become non-envious. We have to discover the non-enviousness that already exists within us. Krishna consciousness is not exactly something we achieve. It's something we uncover. So let's look at ways that we're going to uncover this. We want to do this Chaito Darpana Marjanam. We want to clean the mirror and see our real self. My real self is actually appreciative of others who are equal or greater to myself. In fact, my real self, you ready? Is very happy thinking that I'm the lowest. Materially, that's intolerable. I don't even want to be low, what to speak of the lowest. But my real nature is that I actually find joy in feeling that I'm the lowest, that everyone is greater than I am, and I celebrate everyone's greatness. That's actually our nature. Now think of what that would feel like. What would it feel like if I could celebrate everything wonderful that everyone else had, and I didn't feel that I had to try to diminish it in any way in order to feel good about myself or to feel that what I was doing was right? That I could have a sense, I'm a good person, I'm a wonderful person, I'm loved, I'm full of love, I have everything I need, I have everything I could ever want, I have more than I want, just full of complete gratitude for everything. And so full in this sense, and a sense of abundance. There's plenty of everything. Om Purnam Ada Purnamidam Purnat Purnat Udachate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vasishite. You can take the infinite from the infinite. There's still infinite. That I have infinite grace, and everyone else can have infinite grace too, and there's still plenty for me. I don't have to worry that if I'm serving on Janmashtami, all the paneer sabji will be gone before I get to eat. You know? I used to make the servers put a plate aside for themselves first before they would serve. But I'm already full. How would that feel? Suppose we could feel that. I'm already full. I'm in connection with the infinite. Anandam Buddhivardhanam. It's an expanding. Srila Bhakti-siddhanta Saraswati said, we're finite, but when we're in touch with the infinite, we feel that infinite. Because Krishna is not envious. He's not envious. When we're in touch with him, he shares everything with us. Don't we share everything with all the cells of our body? Do you begrudge any cell of your body anything? Okay, spleen, I'm not feeding you today. Whatever we eat, we distribute to all the parts of our body, right? Yes? Krishna has no envy. He's not like, well, you jivas, you're going to enjoy less than me. I'm going to enjoy more than you. No. Krishna's like, if you love me, if you're connected, if I trust you, then you can enjoy everything that I enjoy. So we're overflowing. There's no anxiety. Everyone can have as much, more, infinite. It doesn't matter. How would that feel? What would that be? Wouldn't that be freedom? Be freedom from anxiety, be freedom from irritation, and then we'd actually be able to love. There wouldn't be any calculating anything. So how are we going to do this? So we can turn, of course, right to the beginning of the Bhagavatam, 112, Dharma Projita Kaitavatra, Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam. The Bhagavatam is for those who are nirmatsara, who have no envy. Prabhupada comments on this in 419.2 purport in relationship to Indra and Prithu. He says, in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for those who are completely nirmatsara, non-envious. In other words, one who is not free from the contamination of envy cannot advance in Krishna consciousness. In Krishna consciousness, however, if someone excels another person, the devotee who is excelled thinks how fortunate the other person is to be advancing in the devotional service. Such non-envy is typical of Vaikuntha. However, when one is envious of his competitor, that is material. Srila Rupa Goswami explains in the fifth wave of the southern ocean of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that when we hear about the activities of pure devotees, we are able to experience some of their rasa. And he says, even materially, if you watch a drama or read a narrative, you can experience some of the emotions of the actors or the characters, correct? Yes. So Srila Rupa Goswami gives this example, and he says that also, if we're hearing about the great devotees, if we're reading the Bhagavatam, we're hearing about those who are non-envious. Now, if we're just reading intellectually, or we're reading just to pass an exam, or we're reading so we can repeat the characters and the plot and impress others or something like that, then it won't have that effect. But if I read and I hear the Shastras the same way that we would get absorbed in a film or TV show, or, you know, if we're trying to absorb, or a drama, where I try to feel, what are these non-envious people feeling? That wakes up that non-envious appreciation that already exists within me. It is, in fact, one of the most powerful ways. That is satam prasango mama virya samvado. We're associating with the non-envious, and we can do that through the Shastra. Then the more we connect with Krishna in the chanting of the holy name, in the worship of the deity, we're part of Krishna. Mamai-vamso jiva-loke jiva-bhuta sanatana. And the more that I connect with my source, with the self of myself, the super self, the more I realize my own nature. Okay, but it's gradual. Generally, the process is gradual. Yes, for most of us, most of the time. Yes. So what do I do when I find myself, even though I'm reading the Bhagavatam, even though I'm chanting, even though I'm worshiping the deity, that I might find myself feeling or acting enviously? Step back and pause. Stop. There's a pause between stimulus and response. Stop. Pause. One of my favorite verses is in 14:22-25. One who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion when they appear, nor long for them when they disappear, always remaining neutral, knowing that the modes are active. Pause. Wait a minute. I'm a soul. My nature is to appreciate and be inspired by others and to feel fullness in myself. This envy is coming from tamagun, maybe a little rajagun mixed in. It certainly isn't coming from sattvagun. And it certainly isn't coming from Vishuddha Sattva. It's external to me. It's not me. It's not me. Just like I can walk by other people fighting and I just walk by. It's not me. So if my mind's doing this, it's not me. Going back to Indra and Prithu. So if we look at 4:20:18, the verse says, as King Indra was standing by, he became ashamed of his own activities and fell down before King Prithu to touch his lotus feet. But Prithu Maharaj immediately embraced him in great ecstasy and gave up all envy against him for his having stolen the horse meant for sacrifice. Oh, it wasn't just Indra who was envious of Prithu. It was also Prithu who was envious of Indra. What was Prithu envious of? That Indra had the power to disrupt his sacrifices. So Prabhupada's purport. There are many cases in which a person becomes an offender to the lotus feet of a Vaishnava and later becomes repentant. Here also we find that although the king of heaven, Indra, was so powerful that he accompanied Lord Vishnu, he felt himself a great offender for stealing Prithu Maharaj's horse that was meant for sacrifice. An offender at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava is never excused by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are many instances illustrating this fact. Ambarish Maharaj was offended by Durvasa Muni, and Durvasa also had to fall down at the lotus feet of Ambarish Maharaj. Indra decided to fall down at the lotus feet of King Prithu, but the king was so magnanimous a Vaishnava that he did not want Maharaj Indra to fall down on his feet. Instead, King Prithu immediately picked him up and embraced them, and both of them forgot all the past incidents. Both King Indra and Maharaj Prithu were envious and angry with each other. But since both of them were Vaishnavas or servants of Lord Vishnu, it was their duty to adjust the cause of their envy. This is also a first-class example of cooperative behavior between Vaishnavas. So if we find ourselves acting according to the modes of nature, does everyone here sometimes, you don't have to raise your hand, but do you sometimes act according to the modes of nature? Embarrassing, isn't it? Best is if you notice that the gunas are attacking me before you become their servant. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's best if you can recognize them from a little bit of a distance. Aha, I see you, Tamagun. I know who you are. Just because you have a little rajas mixed in with you, I know what's going on. And you can go scream and have a tantrum, and I'm not buying into your stuff. I'm a soul, and I have nothing to do with you. That's the best thing. But if that doesn't happen, if sometimes you're just overwhelmed with rajas and tamas before you even knew what happened, then you already opened your mouth. He can't be a high court judge. I knew him when he was a kid. Well, they must not be paying him anything. You sure that person's a guru? Like, seriously? They gave him sanya. He's its own president. Like, really? That person? Sheesh. You know, if you actually start manifesting it, then at least as soon as you notice it, whoops, and rectify. I'm not saying we shouldn't call out people who are actually criminals. I'm not saying that. That's something else. That's not envy. Prabhupada says to call a thief is not fault finding. I'm not talking about criminal behavior. But if we're just envious, oops, and apologize. I mean, sometimes it's a little funny, you know. Oh, Prabhu, I'm so sorry. I offended you in my mind. Okay. And practice genuinely appreciating and being inspired by others. Practice it. Like we can practice gratitude. We can practice appreciation and inspiration. You can practice speaking appreciatively of devotees. You don't have to wait until they die. We can practice being inspired by someone, and we can switch it. If we find our mind going, that's not fair. Look how advanced that person is. Look how nicely they're chanting japa. They're chanting better than I am. And they've only been in the movement for 6 months. Like, wow, it's so wonderful that even they're only in the movement for 6 months, and look how nicely they're chanting. And speak that way, think that way, practice it. And then I want to develop this attitude of the spiritual world. And there's one of my favorite purports is, this is Narada speaking to Dhruva, who is also envious. We had a whole envy thing going on around there. Suruchi was envious of Suniti, and Uttam was envious of Dhruva, and Dhruva was envious of Uttam. Right? It was an envy party. So Dhruva goes to the forest, and his whole motive is envy and vengeance. That's his entire motive. He's not thinking, I want a great kingdom so that I can rule people righteously for the sake of the Lord. That wasn't his motive. His motive is, I want more. You understand? I want more. So Narada Muni says, this is in 4.834, every man should act like this. When he meets a person more qualified than himself, he should be very pleased. When he meets someone less qualified, he should be compassionate. When he meets someone equal, he should make friendship. Now you ready? Everybody ready? In this way, one is never affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. Imagine that. We do not have to go the rest of our life, my dear friends. Dukalayam Shashvatam, Krishna says that. Dukalayam Shashvatam, Anijam Asukam. It was miserable, Prabhu. Just be miserable. Eventually you'll die and you'll go to Vaikuntha, where it'll be nice. But right now it's just miserable. That's not our philosophy, okay? Our philosophy is that we should live in such a way that we don't experience the material world. Even if there is externally misery, our body's sick, our body's injured, someone that we care about dies, we lose all our money, we lose our job, Somebody insults us, our car breaks down, whatever, that it doesn't affect us. Why is it that just by dealing with superiors, equals, and inferiors without envy, that just by doing that, did you ever think about that with this verse? Just by doing that, we're not going to be affected by the material miseries. Because the material miseries all come from Ishwaraham Aham Bhogi Siddhaham. I am the Lord, I am the controller, I am better than everyone. That puts us into an unreal, illusory state, where instead of seeing the world as the body of God, the universe is the body of God, instead of seeing Krishna everywhere, instead of seeing everything as the grace of the Lord, we see everything competitively. As Prabhupada writes in Krishna Book, chapter 20, for the materialist, the world is very aggressive, but for those who are in Krishna consciousness, everything is happily situated. Thank you very much. I am already 2 minutes over, so I don't think I have time for questions. Oh, well, there's a little sign here in brass screwed into the lectern. It says Saturday class finishes at 8:45. It is 8:46 and 30 seconds. So I think I'm done. I mean, it's engraved in brass and screwed into the wood. It's not a Post-it note, Huh? You'll remove it. No. No. Huh? That's ISKCON time. Oh. Is that like when I had the class at the Gurukul the other day at 6 and no one showed up till like 6:30? Okay. Yes?
You did not speak about...
something I didn't speak about.
Shishupal.
I was like, he wants me to give another class now. I'm already over time.
Just
I didn't speak about Shishupal.
Shishupal for envy, and he's the epitome of envy.
English isn't your first language, is it?
English, no. Marathi.
What's your first language?
Marathi. Yeah, I'm from Maharashtra.
Would you like to learn how to pronounce an English word that you don't pronounce properly?
Yeah.
That you learned from reading a book?
Yeah.
Okay. You could always tell when people learned English from reading a book. What is the word actually? It's not epitome, it's epitome.
Epitome.
It's epitome. I know it's spelled like epitome, and if English was a sane phonetic language like Sanskrit or Finnish, it would be epitome. But it's not. It's epitome. Yeah. Shishupal is the epitome of envy? Sure. Yeah, we could also... He also caused a lot of chaos with his envy. Yes. I'm sure we could think of many more examples of envy. I didn't want the whole class to be negative, though. Yes?
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Mana Urmila, for this wonderful class. And I would like to know how to behave. You said behave properly, so with people who are envious to you is to just keep a distance. Yeah? With
I actually didn't talk about that at all.
Actually, it's practical. You said
that's another whole class I didn't give on this topic. How do I deal? I'm not going to say who this was for a variety of reasons, but I was in a class once. Again, please do not ask me who was giving the class. That's a whole other discussion. I don't want to go there. But the person, this was in 1978, and the person, well, I'll tell you this, it was one of the zonal acharyas in 1978. So the person was asked, how do we deal with people who are envious of us? And this person said, why are you worrying about that? Why don't you worry about your own envy? So we can assume that a conditioned soul is envious of us, because conditioned souls are envious. So we can just assume that anyone who's dealing with us has some envy. So if I stay away from everyone who's envious, it's going to be a very lonely life. Right? Now, if somebody is so envious of me, and we talk about this in Bhagavatam 10:32, it's probably verse 20, 21, 22, one of those. It's probably 22. It's probably 10:30, 22. Krishna's responding to the gopis, where Krishna leaves the Ras-lila, and then he comes back, and the gopis say, they're trying to criticize him, and they say, well, there are people they're nice to people who are nice to them, then there are people who are nice to people even who aren't nice to them, and then there's people who aren't nice to anybody. Who are you? And then Krishna takes those 3 categories and he expands them into 9. So in the area of people who aren't nice to anybody, he has several categories. One is the Atmarama. They're so absorbed in their own spiritual bliss, they just don't even interact with anybody. There's the Atmakama, materialists, they already have everything they need, so they may ignore you because they just don't need anything. Then he has the Akritya, the foolish people who are they don't see what anyone does for them. The guy comes home and the wife cleaned the whole house and made a 15-course meal, and he just doesn't even notice. He just sits down and eats and reads the paper or whatever, watches his football game. Ungrateful people. They can't see what people have done for them. Then there's the Guru Druhi. So the Guru Druhi are people who hate those who are benefactors. And he has 3 categories of this. So one is where you hate a benefactor when there's some reason to hate them. So like, I've done something good for you, I've done so many good things for you, but I did mess up one time, and so you're envious of me and you hate me, but you can pick a reason. The other is people who hate for no reason. They hate a benefactor just out of pure envy. And then the worst is those who try to injure a benefactor for no reason. So the benefactor has only been a benefactor and they try to injure them. So if you have people in your life who you've done only good for, which is probably impossible, but if you've basically done just good for them and they want to hurt you, please get away from them. Keep your distance from such people. If you can. Sometimes you can't. Prahlad he had no, where was he going to go? His father's running the universe. He couldn't call the police because his father was the chief of police. He couldn't go anywhere. Or Haridas Thakur, when he's being beaten, they were also envious of his spiritual advancement. He had no place to go, So sometimes we have no place to go. Sometimes the person who envies us to the point of wanting to injure us is related to us in some way that we can't easily leave to protect ourselves. That is sometimes. Then we have to be Madhe Krishna Rakhe Rakhe Krishna Marike. But if it's possible to remove ourselves, but you cannot remove yourself from all envious people. And because we're exhibiting a nature of envy, that's also a problem. You're going to go into your room and be by yourself, and you're going to be with an envious person. So and Krishna says that the demons envy themselves. Have you ever thought about that one? How do you envy yourself? Because I'm a soul. And as a soul, Jivera Swaupaya Krishnara Nityadasa, I'm a servant. And I'm actually the servant of the servant of the servant. My glories is in relishing my smallness. And the demons hate that. They hate that about themselves. I hate that I'm just a small servant of the Lord. Hiranyakashipu didn't just hate that Prahlad was a servant of the Lord, but ultimately we hate that we're servants of the Lord. I had a real epiphany about this many years ago. I was taking prasadam with a devotee in Govinda's in Delhi, and the devotee was quoting Prabhupada, who was quoting Bhaktisiddhanta, saying that Krishna is the transcendental autocrat, and I felt in my heart a scream, "No, I don't like autocrats!" And as soon as I felt that, I'm like, no wonder I'm not experiencing Krishna Prema. I'm envious of myself. I hate that I'm a servant of the transcendental autocrat. It was like, whoa. So yeah, go to the room, lock the door, don't be around. You can't get on social media either. You can't lock your room and just, that won't work. A lot of envious people in there too. Close your room, lock your door. Just even pick up your beads, and your mind's still going to have this, why is Krishna the transcendental autocrat? Why isn't it me? It's a problem.
Thank you very much. about kids. They naturally want to be better than father. Is it some kind of envy or it's different?
That naturally, no, that's a good question. And a place, Krishna points out that in this world, in this same conversation, in 1032, it's probably verse 21. Or maybe the previous set of verses, I can't remember. Anyways, in that section, where Krishna says there's two types of people who are not envious, who just love everyone, the pure devotees and family, especially parents. So, I mean, there are whacked up, abusive, nutcase parents, okay? And maybe some of you have parents like that, I'm sorry. But generally, if parents are normal, healthy people, they're not envious of their own children. And generally, parents enjoy seeing their children excel them. You know, the parent will work 2 jobs. They never finish secondary school, but they work 2 jobs to have their kid become a doctor or something. And they're like, my son, the doctor. You know, I'm just a custodian, I'm just a janitor, but my son's a doctor. I don't know if children are actually envious of their parents. I think to some extent, children are disturbed by the fact that parents have power over them. You know, I remember my oldest grandson who came here, he visited here, very, very nice young man. Very nice Vaishnava, very nice young man. But when he was like 10, he went to his father, my son, and said, why do you have to be in charge? Why can't I be in charge? Yeah, and my youngest son, when he was the same age, like 9 or 10, he said to me, Mata, don't tell me when I do something good. Don't tell me when I do something bad. Don't tell me anything. I said, I don't think it works like that. I see that as more the natural biological urge of the child to become an adult. That becoming adult, for all of us here, we're all adults here, it was a lot harder than we thought, wasn't it? So when we do have a kid here. So when you're a kid, you think, when I'm an adult, I can do whatever I want. I can eat ice cream 3 times a day. And then you get to be an adult and you got A's in all your health classes in school and you're like, it really wouldn't be very good for me to eat ice cream 3 times a day. But I just see, you know, how much more convenient would it be if I never adult? Right? My parents are paying the bills, they're feeding me, they're doing my laundry, they're cleaning my room, they're taking care of everything, they're chauffeuring me everywhere. It would be much more convenient to stay a kid, right? But we have this huge urge, it's overwhelming urge to adult. And so I believe that what you're seeing is not exactly envy, but it's a manifestation of this biological imperative that I want to be independent. I want to be an adult. I want to take responsibility. And if we see it like that, and we say, I'm very glad that you want to take responsibility and become an adult. You know, we don't want our children to remain dependent children. By the way, that's also true in the Hare Krishna movement. We should want devotees to grow up and take responsibility in the mission. Success is not if we keep people psychologically and practically dependent. And you can figure out what I'm talking about. Success is if people take responsibility, become an adult. Become an adult on all levels and actually make a contribution. Like one time a devotee wrote to Prabhupada and signed the letter, "Your eternally useless servant." That's not pleasing. Yes? Okay, we definitely should end now because now it's 9 o'clock. So even with, I've exceeded my brass plaque time. Anything good in this class is from Srila Prabhupada and the Bhagavatam and our acharyas and the Caitanya-Caritāmṛta and Krishna Das Kaviraj. Anything bad in this class is from me. Please take the good here, and if you can leave aside the bad. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Urmila Dasi ki. haven't sent you a message. Just one lesson yesterday.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.